Maplewood Manor. Once grand, now decaying. A Victorian mansion, shrouded in darkness. Whispers of tragedy clung to its crumbling walls. Built in 1888, it had seen its share of sorrow. A fire claiming the lives of the first family. Unexplained disappearances plagued later inhabitants. Locals spoke of cold spots, spectral figures, and disembodied screams. The mansion stood silent, a monument to its grim past, a beacon for the supernatural. Daniel Blackwood scoffed at the stories. Tales of ghosts and haunted mansions were nothing but figments of overactive imaginations to him. He had always been a man of reason, grounded in reality. A writer, he sought inspiration, not ghosts. His latest project demanded a deep dive into the supernatural, but he was determined to approach it with a skeptic's eye. He planned to debunk the myths, expose the truth. Armed with his notebook and a critical mind, he set out to uncover the reality behind the legends. He arrived at Maplewood on a dreary afternoon. The mansion loomed before him, its windows like dark, empty eyes watching his every move. The air hung heavy, thick with foreboding. A dense fog wrapped around the mansion, adding to its eerie aura. Ignoring the prickling at the back of his neck, he stepped inside. The door creaked ominously as it closed behind him, sealing him in the darkness. Dust-covered furniture, cobwebs in every corner. The mansion seemed frozen in time, untouched for decades. The air felt stagnant, heavy with the weight of the past. Each step he took stirred up clouds of dust, making the air even thicker. He started his research, determined to find a rational explanation for the mansion's eerie reputation. Hours turned into days as he pored over old documents, each one adding a piece to the puzzle. The first night, he heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound that sent chills down his spine. A whisper, his name carried on the wind. It was as if the very air around him was alive, speaking to him in hushed tones. He dismissed it. The house creaked, settling after years of neglect. But deep down he felt an unease he couldn't shake. The next day, shadows moved in the corner of his eye. They seemed to dance and flicker just out of reach, always in the periphery. Books flew off shelves, crashing to the floor. The sound echoed through the empty house, a cacophony of chaos that left him breathless. He tried to rationalize it, but fear began to gnaw at his resolve. Each night, the sense of dread grew stronger, more palpable. One night, he woke to icy breath on his face. The room was freezing, his breath visible in the cold air, and he felt an overwhelming presence. A shadowy figure hovered above him, eyes glowing with malevolent intent. It felt as though the darkness itself had come alive, watching him. He scrambled back, heart pounding, as it vanished into thin air. The terror was real, and he knew he was no longer alone in the house. Terror became his constant companion. He couldn't escape the feeling of being watched, hunted. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. One night, the entity made itself known. A swirling vortex of darkness materialized in the center of the room. A voice boomed, filled with rage and sorrow. It spoke of betrayal, of a fire set ablaze, of innocent lives lost. It demanded retribution. Daniel, paralyzed with fear, could only watch as the darkness surged towards him. The entity revealed its true form, emerging from the shadows with an unsettling presence. Its appearance was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a dark silhouette that seemed to absorb all light around it. The charred figure of a woman, her eyes burning with hatred, stood before him. Her presence was overwhelming, a mix of sorrow and anger that seemed to radiate from her very being. She was the wife of the first owner, murdered in cold blood, her death cruelly disguised as an accident. The photograph showed a happier time, a stark contrast to her current tormented state. She had been trapped in the house for decades, her rage and sorrow fueling the supernatural occurrences that plagued the manor. Her spirit, unable to find peace, lashed out at anyone who dared to enter. Her touch sent waves of icy pain through Daniel, his skepticism crumbling with each agonizing second. He could feel her anguish, her desperation, and it was almost too much to bear. As dawn broke, the apparition began to fade, leaving behind the faint scent of smoke and the chilling realization of her tragic story. The morning light brought a temporary reprieve, but the memory of her presence lingered. Maplewood Manor was indeed haunted, and he, the skeptic, was now a believer. The once grand estate was now a place of sorrow and mystery, its haunted history forever etched in his mind.